This is my first recycle, reuse, reduce, repeat workshop. Today we're going to do a recycled sweatshirt. Right here I've used a sweatshirt and an old flannel shirt. And I've made a heart, just in case you need something for Valentine's Day. I'm going to get rid of her because we're going to get started. Today I'm going to use a navy blue sweatshirt, and I got this at the thrift store. And you can see it has a stain on the front of it, but that's okay because we're going to cover it up. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is cut the bottom band of your sweatshirt off. And I like to use my good sharp sewing scissors for this, or any sharp scissors that you might have. Right above the band where it's attached to the sweatshirt, we're going to cut through all thicknesses. Just like that. Okay. Then I'm going to lay it out on my table, and I fortunately have a cutting mat here, but just lay it out on your table so you can get a visual if it's nice and straight or not. And I can see from the bottom here that I need to square it up a little bit. So I've got my tailor's chalk, and that's something you'll want to keep in your little sewing kit. This tailor's chalk is invaluable. And I'm going to find a line on my mat, or just eyeball it, whatever you have at home. And I'm going to draw a chalk line. And this is going to give me a nice straight edge to attach my flannel to. And today I'm going to use a pair of flannel pajama pants. Okay, so again, I've got my sharp scissors, and I'm going to cut right along the bottom band here. If you have a rotary cutter and a rotary cutter blade and a mat, go ahead and use that. They're pretty slick. Okay, this is where you kind of need to decide what length you'd like your sweatshirt to be. You can see on this sweatshirt that the band is going to add about 4.5 inches to the length of the sweatshirt. So if you have a favorite shirt in your closet, take your favorite shirt, lay it up to the sweatshirt you're cutting, and see if it ends up being the length you'd like of just the body, because we're going to add some to the bottom. And this is just really close to this one, so I'm going to leave it just as it is. Next, we're going to cut off the cuffs. And I'll just run those together, kind of make sure they're a little bit flat. I'm going to draw a chalk line. This time I'm going to make the sleeves a little bit longer. These sleeves are a true 3/4, and I really can't cuff them, but these I'd like to be able to roll up. So I'm going to kind of come in a little bit closer to the band, draw my chalk line, and cut them off. As simple as that. So I've got both of my sleeves cut off, and this is going to allow me to roll the cuffs like this. And I think that looks kind of fun too. Helps them stay up a little bit. Next, we're going to cut off the neckband. Okay, so this, I cut right below the seam line for the neckband. And I cut through one thickness at a time. And this is freehand cutting. It's going to be left raw edge. We're not going to finish this off with a piece of fabric or anything. And then I'm going to come in on the inside and cut that off. Okay, now you'll probably want to try it on to see if you want your neckline a little bit bigger. You can't make it any smaller, but you can make it a little bit bigger. And sometimes I like them just a little bit bigger, but at this point, try it on. Okay, we are ready for the bottom band now. So let's get the sweatshirt out of the way, and we're going to cut up the flannel pajama pants. Now, if you're going to have a flannel shirt, you'll want to use the body of the flannel shirt to cut your 4 or 5-inch strips for your bottom band. And I really like working with plaid because I can cut along the lines of the plaid, and then my pieces are cut perfectly straight. Okay. So, and you want to make sure you have enough width. You're going to use two pieces, one piece for the front, one piece for the back. You want to have sufficient width in your flannel shirt. If you go to this thrift store to get one, get a big shirt because you'll use all the fabric. All right, so now I'm going to find out where I'd like here's my ruler. And I think I'm going to cut this 4.5 inches, but if I've got a plaid, I'm pretty much going to cut it the width of the plaid designs, so the plaid fabric does all the work for me. So let's see, from the edge of that green line, okay, I got my marks. And I'm just going to figure out where I'd like to start cutting these. So I'm going to use one leg for the front and back, and the other leg is for my applique emblem for the front. And this will go right here. Now I'm just going to cut this one leg at a time because they're probably not going to match up, but that's okay because we're going to get enough width out of this to do the front, and then the back of the leg is going to be enough to do the back of the sweatshirt. And just keep cutting. All right, now it's going to be a little easier. I've got my mat underneath now instead of another layer of fabric. And just keep cutting until you have enough width. Then we're going to go a little bit more on this one. And like that. And that's plenty, so now we're going to cut this off. Okay. There's one, and let's go ahead and cut that other one. There we go. I love these big tables I can use out here at Go Create. It's awesome. And I'm just going to lay this over it so I can figure out the same depth of plaid fabric and get my lines marked. There's one, and there's two. Okay, and then we just start cutting again. You can also go to the fabric store and buy fabric off a bolt to do this. You don't have to use recycled items. I kind of like it though. Prices are right, especially at the thrift store. Or you can raid your closet. And I've got pretty much all the length I can get out of that one. All right. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to attach the plaid to the bottom of the sweatshirt. You want to make sure your fabric or your sweatshirt is laying out pretty flat. If you didn't have a plaid, I'd suggest coming along with some of your tailor's chalk and drawing a little chalk line on your fabric, because that's what's going to tuck up underneath the bottom edge of the sweatshirt. But since I have a plaid, I'm just going to use the lines I have. And when you use flannel, there is a right and a wrong side, so make sure you match the front and the back up the same. Okay, so I'm going to start in the middle. I'm going to just make it a lot bigger than my sweatshirt. I'm going to start in the middle and get your pin cushion. And you're going to tuck this up underneath of your sweatshirt. I need to when you start pinning, I just grab a notebook or some piece of cardboard or something and put it between the two layers of your sweatshirt, because you don't want to pin both layers. You want to just do one layer at a time. So I'm going to lay this out till it's pretty flat. I'm going to mark what would be the side seam. Most sweatshirts don't have side seams, but I'm going to mark where I think that would be. Okay, so I'm going to lay this on here. We're not going to hem this. We're going to have raw edges everywhere, which is part of the charm. And I'm going to tuck this underneath of the sweatshirt. And I'm going to follow that same line. I'm going to start in the middle. And I suggest tugging slightly on your sweatshirt, not a lot, but just slightly. You're going from an item that has a lot of stretch to a piece of fabric that has no stretch. So if you try to put this on without giving yourself a little bit of ease in the bottom of it, you're going to get tied up in it. So I've got one pin in, and I just kind of tug it just a little bit. See, not very much, just a little bit. And I'm a good 1/2 inch underneath. I'm going to slide that down just a little bit, okay? I'm going to tug on the sweatshirt just a little bit more. And put another pin. And I'm going to keep doing the rest. Okay, I got it all pinned. Now I'm ready to fold in the fabric on the two sides. This is about the only place that I make a finished edge. It wouldn't be necessary. I just like the way it added a little bit of stability to the side seam. Okay, so what we're going to do is give ourselves a good 2 inches from the side seam of the sweatshirt. And again, I've got plaid, so I'm going to follow my plaid. Cut that off. And then you're going to fold it in once. And you're going to fold it in twice. This gives you a nice finished edge on your hemline. Tuck that underneath. And stick a straight pin in there again. And then I'll also add a straight pin to the side here. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And again, I kind of move my little cardboard piece from side to side. Just kind of stretch it out. Give yourselves a good 2 inches at least. If it's more, that's fine. If it's less, that's fine. Just as long as you have enough to turn under. So we're going to turn it under once. And we're going to turn it under twice. And then stick it up underneath of there. And hold it with the straight pin. And put one more straight pin in the split. We're already halfway done with the bottom of it. Now I'm going to do the back side. Flip it over. It's going to be a repeat of what we did on the front side. Quick and easy. Put your cardboard or your notebook in there again. I always start in the middle, then that way I know I have enough fabric to go to each side, the right and the left side. Smooth your sweatshirt out. And then, oops, make sure I get the right side of the fabric because there is a difference. I'm going to start right in the middle again. And I have the wrong side up. Whoops. And I'm going to just tuck that under a good 1/2 inch. Use the straight pins. Pull slightly on your sweatshirt. Put another pin in. And I'm going to do the rest. All right, everything's pinned. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine. And that is what it looks like. All right, over to the sewing machine, just a standard stitch. Nothing fancy, you don't need to zigzag or anything like that. Sweatshirts don't run, they don't tear easy, so we can just stitch this on here. I use about a 1/4 inch foot, whatever works for you. And let's see if we can do this. Take out your pins as you get to them. Don't want that sewing machine to go over all those pins and mess it up. And again, I'll pull on my sweatshirt just slightly so that it lays flat with the flannel underneath of it, because I pulled on it when I was pinning it together. And that's all there is to this. I'm going to stitch all the way around it now. Okay. Now you want to come back in and trim off all your loose threads from your stopping and starting. Just trim all those off. And now I'm going to show you how to stitch these vents, the side slits in the shirt. This I stitched from the wrong side. And basically just give her a start, back stitch a couple, 3 stitches, and then stitch again right along that folded end till you get to the bottom. Back stitch a couple more, cut your threads, and do the other 3. I'll be back. Okay, everything is stitched down, the bottom band is on, the side slits are stitched up, I've got my little cuffs rolled up here. Now I'm going to work on an emblem for the front. I have chosen to make a faux Chanel. I like to use freezer paper. When I make my emblems for the fronts of anything, my little applique designs, and it comes in a big old roll like this, and you get it where you get aluminum foil and wax paper, etc. And you buy 1,000 yards of it at once, it seems like. Tear that off of there. And I use really handy, very accessible tools to help me with my artwork. A plastic lid and a saucer. This is going to help me get my 2 circle shapes that I want for my emblem, just like that. So what I do is I'll draw it first in pencil, and then that way it allows me to erase any lines that I don't particularly want on my emblem. So I'm going to kind of figure out where I want this saucer. I'm going to come around just like that, go around to the other half of it. That looks pretty good. Come around with another circle. Then my handy dandy center portion is this plastic lid, and just kind of eyeball, make sure you get the same distance all the way around so it doesn't look offset. That looks pretty good. Trace that. I'm going to do the same over here. That looks pretty good. Right like there. And we know that we want the openings on the side, so I'm going to come in, freehand those lines, and erase it. Because I'm going to do a final drawing with my Sharpie. And erase those, because it's going to be a lot easier to see when I cut this out. So then you just freehand draw around it, follow your shape around. Oops, see, I shouldn't have drawn that line. I forgot to erase the inner lines. Oh my goodness. There. One more. When you use freezer paper, there's a paper side and a slick side. And this slick side can be pressed to fabric, and then it peels right up. It is just neater than anything. All right. Now back to your plaid fabric and the other leg. You need to cut off a piece of fabric big enough for whatever applique design you want to make. If you want to make a heart for Valentine's Day, just get you out a piece of freezer paper and draw the heart on there, just freehand. Whatever you'd like to make on your shirt. Let's see, if I use the leg, that ought to be big enough. Just cut off a hunk of fabric. Cut your side seam apart. Dryer sheet, these were clean. Now I'm going to go to the iron. All right, so I've got my fabric laid out and I've got my emblem ready to be ironed on. There's a paper side that we drew on and there's a slick side on the back, and that is what will stick to the fabric. It won't stick permanently, but it'll stick good enough for you to cut out your design. I think I'm going to lay this one a little bit on the bias, get a little bit more texture in the design here. And just press it down. When it's cooled enough to pick up, then we're going to cut out the design. You want to use a good pair of sharp scissors to cut this out. I'm going to cut on the dark line, except for in there. As you're cutting, if you move the fabric and not your arm, you're going to get a smoother cut around the edges. So you'll see me, I'm going to move that fabric around. I keep my arm pretty much tied to my side here. Kind of get rid of some of the excess as you're cutting. Now I'm going to come inside and see how that freezer paper is still stuck to it. It is just amazing. Oops, missed. to cut the center portion out, just kind of fold it in half, give yourself a slice in the middle of it, and then that can be your relief point to finish cutting out that inner portion. All right, our Chanel emblem is done. Now, take off the freezer paper, and it just pulls right off, just like that. Save this in case you want to do it again. It'll fuse to another fabric. You can probably use this at least 2, maybe 3 times, depending on your fabric. Save it. All right, so now we're going to come in here and figure out where we want to lay this emblem. And I had a spot right there, so I'm going to cover that up. Isn't that cute? And I'm going to need to, okay, I did insert my piece of cardboard inside here because I'm going to use several straight pins to hold my, my image down. I'm also going to measure between the shoulder seams and the side area to make sure I have it centered. So I can lay this ruler on here and 18. I'm going to use this ruler. It's a little bit easier to see. Let's use this one. There we go. Okay, so it's 17 inches, so 8.5 inches is the middle. And I'm going to get my chalk out. Make a line, 8.5 and 8.5. That's going to kind of help me center my image, and also where you'd like it positioned vertically as well. I'm going to move this down a little bit. So there's my center, here's my center. I'm going to just line it up like that. Curve my letters around so they're nice and flat. And use some straight pins to hold it, because we are going to straight stitch this. And that piece of cardboard in there helps you so you don't straight pin both sides. I'm going to move these a little bit to where it catches both of them. All right. Okay, I've got it all pinned, straight pinned down. That's going to help secure it in place while I sew it. Take out my piece of cardboard here. And now I'm going to turn it inside out because it's just a little bit easier to stitch it on the sewing machine and make sure I'm not stitching through the back side. So I'm going to come over here to my sewing machine. I'm going to stitch the outside portion first and then do the inside portion. And just kind of pick a spot. Try to keep it the same distance from the edge of the applique. If your sewing machine would happen to have a needle down position, you might use that because you're going to be stitching around curves and you'll want to go a little slower. In this case, I'm going to leave my straight pins in and carefully stitch over the top of them because I need the stability of the straight pins to the opposite, to the inside portion of the applique design. It's all stitched on the inside and outside. Now I'm going to take out the rest of my straight pins and show you what we've got. I think I got them all. Turn it back right sides out. There it is. The spot is covered. I'm going to hit this real quick with an iron, and you can see that that tailor's chalk just disappears with an iron with the heat. Roll up your sleeves a little bit. After it's, let me tell you, after it's washed and dried, the edges of this flannel are going to fray up really neat, like this, the heart on this one, and it's going to fray across the bottom. It adds such a neat texture. We're done. I hope you enjoyed this recycle, reuse, reduce, repeat segment. I look forward to having a few more segments with you, so keep tuned in. Thank you.